Hello. My name is Kim Addis. I am the president and founder of Frame of Mind Coaching, and you have just joined the Frame of Mind Coaching podcast, where here's what we do. We actually invite willing individuals, typically leaders in organizations, to come onto the show and get coached live and in person. So I want to welcome today my guest. His name is David Orban. Did I say it right? And he is a managing director of a company called Network Society. David, welcome.
Thank you very much. It is lovely to be here with you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you located? I know your area code is 917, but it didn't click for me. Where is that?
That is based in New York, but I haven't been in New York since January. I constantly travel, or rather used to travel.
Yes.
Keynoting conferences. Literally every week I would be in a different continent. But on February 27, I declined to go to St. Petersburg, Russia, because I didn't want to spend 2 weeks or 2 months in a probably very welcoming, but still Russian quarantine facility.
Right.
I have a home in Italy,
Okay.
near Milan, and that is where I have been since.
So are you there right now?
Yes.
Very nice. Okay, so cool. We're talking to a European. That's fun. It's a little bit of a change from our normal guest, but I'm so excited to have you on. So what is Network Society? What do you do? What does it mean? What's the intention of your company?
I started my professional life in artificial intelligence many years ago, and I created and built companies both in Europe and in the US as an entrepreneur. I was part of the team that designed the Singularity University at the NASA Research Park in California, and based on that experience, I formulated and published a view, a paradigm, if you wish, that looks at how exponential change, accelerating change, very naturally leads to decentralization. And we can see that in energy, with solar, for example, or manufacturing with 3D printing. And I created Network Society around that. That is the brand encompassing my various activities. I have a London-based think tank, a New York-based investment firm. And most recently, I joined because I felt just incredibly excited and enthusiastic about its mission, Torre, which is a San Francisco-based startup, decentralized in terms of workforce, because it is a completely remote team founded by Alex Torrenegra, whom I have been advising for the past 10 years. And Torre is a new professional network with the mission of enabling anyone to find a fulfilling work and manage their professional career. So that is
tell me a little bit more about how that works. If I'm kind of, let's say, in a new phase of my life, I join this network and somebody might be looking for my skills, at which point they might reach out to me and tap into those skills in a decentralized format. Did I get that right?
So it is what we call remote work. Because we realized that it wasn't only coders in Bali that could bang on their keyboards and be happy,
right.
But so many of the jobs that corporations pretended we had to do sitting at a desk 9 to 5, well, turns out we didn't have to. And maybe the people who are most in trouble are the middle managers who justified their existence by walking behind the backs of all the people who they pretended would only work if the managers looked behind their backs. Now, it turns out that is not the case. A lot of people, luckily, are driven by their talents and their passion. And even if they are home, they work because they like what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And they are lucky to be in an organization that measures their outcomes and not the input in terms of hours or when exactly that they are working or what exactly they are doing. What matters are the results. So on Torre, there are AI-driven algorithms that analyze both your skills and certifications and work experience, but also personality traits and the parts and the facets of who you are, soft skills that not only match you with a job, but also with a team, minimizing churn and maximizing productivity.
So for those people who are listening, how do they find this? It's TORRE?
Correct. It's TORRE.co.
Okay.
And it is live already. There are more than 700,000 people on the platform. Depending on when the people are watching this, it is growing very, very fast. So it will be already in the millions, maybe. And of course, you can find all kinds of jobs, engineering jobs, marketing jobs, sales jobs, characterized by the fact that it can be done remotely. And hundreds of companies are hiring on Torre.
Very interesting. So you're on this podcast, and I'm here to coach you. So I'm going to ask you a question. What is your greatest challenge? Tell us a little bit about that.
I love representing my abilities as hopefully, potentially, an increasing degree of managing complexity.
Okay.
In terms of people who are reporting to me, in terms of the tasks that together with them we can successfully attack and resolve, and then go on to the next challenge. However, in a certain way, even though many of us feel that we are up to these challenges and up to those tasks, that actually depends on how stable the environment is within which we are operating. So lately, this environment has become pretty unstable for a lot of us. And then the question is, are we adapted or are we also adaptable? Because if we are well adapted to the previous situation, but we are not adaptable to whatever changes we are experiencing, then maybe the skills that we have are not going to lead to a continued success. And so my question is whether I am pushing my adaptability far enough, and what is the limit of this adaptability? Either because I cannot go beyond it, one, or if I do, society, my colleagues, my family will just find it easier to label me as crazy. Because from their point of view, I will have gone too far from the norm that they have seen in terms of, whatever professional behavior or tools we use or things like that.
Okay, so let's try to make this a little bit more tangible for me and for our listeners. Okay, so I think what you're saying is, I'm speaking on your behalf right now. You tell me if I got it right. I'm a person who's highly adaptable. I'm able to change with circumstances and make the most out of it. Did I get that right?
Well, I believe I am. And
Yes.
The question is, am I sufficiently adaptable, or should I push myself more to be more adaptable? And is there a maximum desirable degree of adaptability beyond which it becomes either too weird or too risky?
Okay. So the word too weird, too risky is really important in this conversation. And we can use the word adaptability interchangeably. Am I too driven? Is there a point at which being driven isn't good anymore? Is there a cost to that? Am I too intelligent? Am I too energetic? Okay, so I'm using the words interchangeably a little bit, right? In your cases, at what point is adaptability, what's the maximum, what's the peak? How do I figure out what that peak is without it creating a cost for me? Yes, that's really what you're asking.
It is a good way of looking at it.
Okay, and I'm envisioning in my head a graph, where there's a peak and then it starts to decline.
In
And
terms
so,
of the value generated by that particular thing that we would be measuring, in my case, this
exactly.
concept of adaptability.
Okay.
Of course,
Okay,
good.
so there's perhaps a math equation that can be had here where you figure that out. But I'm not a math specialist. I coach leaders. And so my interest is in what is the thinking that you bring to the table that even considers the idea that there might be a cost to adaptability. So that's interesting to me. At what point, where did you experience friction in your life, professionally or personally, that even suggested that adaptability or too much of adaptability would be costly?
Well, the external world has a certain image of you, and some people doing a job complementary to yours could be, rather than coaching leaders, they could be managing the brand image of leaders. And then a certain situation might require that person to step out of the frame of reference that the brand constrained them under. And so that the consultant could come to them and say, hey, but wait a minute, the things that you are saying or writing, or the videos that you are recording, or the interviews that you are giving are not on message. And the answer at that point is, I don't care about the message. I don't care about the brand, because if necessary, I'd rather go and experiment and interface myself with new opportunities than stay on message and become the dinosaur that was on message, perfectly on message, but couldn't evolve, right?
So,
Now, what is the cost? Because that was your question. What
yeah,
is the cost? The cost is the absolutely admissible and unavoidable confusion that people who are accustomed perceiving you in a certain way could experience. Because the consultant is right, you are not on message. And just because that is necessary, it doesn't mean that it is not creating, for example, this confusion of perceiving your public image.
okay.
That is just one facet and one example, but an example that maybe illustrates the issue of what is the cost of this increased adaptability.
Okay, so is this your issue specifically? What you just described?
People forever told me that I am hard to put in a box, and that is fine. I accepted that, and if you go and look, if you Google me, you will see a lot of things, and whether you care and invest some time, a given picture could emerge where you see what my interests are and what are my activities, etc. And that is not necessarily a concern by itself. So I'm not worried about my brand or my image. It was just an example. The question maybe is more about the professional relationships and the professional the acceleration that those relationships can give. That can be another example. When you change a lot, you are giving up relationships that were useful in a professional sense in the past, but in the new world, they may be less useful.
Okay.
So the investment that you made in developing them ran its course, and now it's turned for a new kind of investment that needs to mature before you can gain its returns.
Okay. So, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts, and let me try to relate it to some of what we do in coaching. Okay. So, first of all, I see you as a person who wants to move forward. You are that person who doesn't want to be a dinosaur. You are that person who has new ideas and wants to bring them to the table. That's how I see you. That's how you sound, to be honest. And so the question is, should you hold that back in order to keep up with the pace of the development and evolution of those around you? And that's kind of like trying to keep a race horse in a cage. Not a good idea. From a purely human standpoint, we cannot hold you back, nor should we, because if we do, we create a great amount of dissatisfaction and frustration. So what I always want to do with leaders, clients, is understand their greatest strength and allow them to harness it, encourage them to harness it, without giving consideration necessarily to other people's opinions of that. Okay, so we want you to be unleashed. We want you to leverage your greatest strengths. Having said that, okay, so that's part A. I don't think we can hold you back. Don't even think about it. That's part A. Part B is, what we notice when we coach leaders is that they change, because their point of view changes, their perspective changes, their beliefs change, a lot of things change. It's actually an accelerated form of growth in coaching. It's exactly what you're talking about. And what happens when a person grows at an accelerated rate is exactly what you described. Some of the former relationships fall behind. They're no longer a match, they're no longer a fit. And so there's a little bit of friction or discomfort that happens when we notice relationships fall behind. But what we want to do is encourage an openness to the new relationships that are coming in. And really, in kind of coaching terms, when we're focusing on new things, people who are matched to those new things show up. Right? And so it's a little bit esoteric, but that's just the way it works, right?
Well, let me respond to that, because I have people who I see who have potential, and they develop their potential to the degree that they do, but do so in a manner that is less visible to the outside world than it could be. In my case, exactly because I am very eager to share my thoughts, and I'm not concerned about having been given any permission to do so by anyone.
Right.
I just go and do it. For me, harnessing the serendipity of those potential encounters is almost a daily experience. In the way that I possibly introduce new components in the things that I think and talk about. And a concrete example is my experience with Torre, which is in the HR tech sector, that I have had no experience with before, right? So I gladly expose my ignorance and ask a series of questions about it, and then welcome the feedback, and then refine the questions, and then potentially start and form opinions. And as these opinions mature, the degree and the depth of those connections can also improve.
Sure.
So that is something that for me is definitely part of the process.
So there's one more piece that I want to address. Okay, so just to go back, can you hold back on your evolution or on your growth and change? I would say no. That's number one. Number two is, do some relationships fall away as you evolve, as you change, as you grow? 100%. And new relationships build. Okay. But you brought something else to the table. And I think this is a very important question, is there are people in my world that are important to me, maybe my wife, my family, my friends, my people who are close to me, that I love, that I care about, who might look at me and say, what are you doing? Like, you've just changed too much. Are you crazy? Right? And so the question becomes, how do you manage those relationships that you want to maintain in your process of evolution?
So yes, and betcha. I have a wife. I've been married to her, and she has been married to me, as it is usually the case, for over 30 years. So we both decided that this time around we will do it like that, and next time we will see. But I kind of preempted the whole problem with her because I don't know how many years ago I told her that actually I may plan to become crazy. And she knew that I potentially wasn't even joking.
Hmm.
But I haven't pushed that too far yet. And one of the reasons is because we have three children. So we had responsibilities, and the fun potentially will start when they leave the house, and one of the three is still here. And then she and I will be able to uh, maybe push a little bit more on the gas pedal.
Right.
And definitely, I am saying fun in terms of adventure and experience, but also risk and training new muscles, right?
Right.
That bring hurt and bring challenges, but still, as long as you decide that's what you want to do, you keep going and you keep training.
Sure. And so, what I really wanted to say is that when we are changing right in front of the people that we love, it's really important to communicate where you are, where you've been, where you're going, what you're experiencing, and share the journey so that it's not coming as a shock. That suddenly one day you wake up and you say, okay, like I'm done with all this. We're going to go live in the Amazon, right? So that it's not a shock, that they see the unfolding and the evolution, and they get to choose to join your journey or not. But it's that thing, it's the process of how we share what we're experiencing that allows the people in our world to embrace it or to resist it, but that they get a choice in the process as well. So that it's not only your decision or not only your choice. That makes things a little bit easier for you as well.
And it is, I think, important not only to communicate factually, but also to be able to compound the information flow with the right kinds of emotions, because a lot of these things have deep, important emotional undercurrents, and often we are trained not to exhibit too much, or we believe that these emotions are a burden on the other, but instead they are very much part of that necessary communication component.
Right. And this brings me to my last concept or my last thought is that the way we do anything is a function of our beliefs, right? And you're a very interesting kind of person who, on the one hand, you have very leading edge beliefs. And on the other hand, you're very conscious of the beliefs that exist outside of you. And how perhaps in your mind, you might find a little bit of a battle between going along your path and taking into consideration the beliefs of others.
Thank you for that. It is part of my journey to try and find interesting questions. And an interesting question that I haven't found a way of correctly addressing yet is to what extent our objectives shape our actions and the world, because we have become, as individuals and societies, so powerful that when we decide something, literally the world changes. So
Yes.
that brings a huge responsibility with it, on one hand, and on the other hand, the respect for others requires that this power is shared, that the decisions are as consensual as possible, that the path is inclusive, yeah, that is very open still, because we have so many things to do, so many decisions to make, that these conversations about how to lay down that path, and how to decide about the multitude of things is itself a great opportunity for conversations, for communication.
So let's just go back, right? You said something very important. You said that the world is a function, you said it in different words, of our objectives. You know, the minute we have a goal or something we want to achieve, we see the world change. And to a great extent, you're correct. However, I also see a whole bunch of people that I interact with who have objectives that are not met, that are not achieved. Most people have objectives or goals that they have struggles to achieve and reach. And the reason for that, by and large, is they have a thinking pattern, a set of beliefs, a view of the world, a set of perspectives that cause a friction between what they want and the actions they take to achieve those goals. So why am I saying this? Because in your case, when you want to go in a direction and there are people who matter to you that are resisting, there's a reason for their resistance, and it has to do with their perspective and their beliefs. When I coach leaders, the question I always ask is, what is it that you actually truly deeply want? What do you want? And I show them how their behaviors and their thinking is often not lined up with that goal. And so I share that with you because I think that will become an important part of bringing along those significant players on your journey. However, what's really important there is making sure that you're both, or whoever you and those other people are looking for the same things, looking for the same outcomes, and want the same ultimate goals or have the same desires. But when you can agree to the outcomes you're looking for, then you can examine the thinking that will get you there. And that's really the journey that I take my clients on. And I think that you're completely capable of doing the same thing.
Well, thank you very much. This is a fun process, and I don't know, in their journey, as you engage with your clients, when is the optimal situation or position that they find themselves, or even age. I never had a coach, and so this is a wonderful first experience for me. And I wonder what is the right balance between examining the professional goals and examining the personal context that may support or hinder those goals, and which is the one that your clients prioritize.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the answer to that, and thank you for asking, because it's a great lead up for me. There is no distinction in my mind between a person's personal goals and their professional goals. They all blend together. The reason we have professional goals is to satisfy some kind of personal desire, need, level of satisfaction. So they go together. When we coach people, we don't separate a person's professional life and their personal life. We look at their whole life. But more than that, we look at how they think about their whole life and how their thinking impacts the results that they're getting, both professionally and personally. So for me, they're integrated. They're not separate. And there isn't a balance. It's all one thing. It's not some of this and some of that. It's all of both, if that makes any sense.
Well, it is true. Otherwise, we would all be schizophrenic. And there are other professionals rather than coaches that would help us
Right.
in those situations. Um, and it is also true that society doesn't always recognize the fact itself. So often the messages that people receive are simplified to an excessive degree. And when listening to those simplified messages, one could get the impression that whatever a person is, between professional and personal facets or others too, can be separated, or just analyzing one is enough.
Well, I like to
So,
challenge all those conventional beliefs.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that is wonderful and very much needed. I started our conversation saying that complexity needs to be embraced. So a society understanding that people are complex would potentially allow it to respond to that complexity with support systems or ways of learning or ways of reacting to a person's evolution that is more up to the task of spreading well-being, spreading wealth, spreading the ability to achieve goals and fulfill opportunities.
So here's a question for you. This is a very interesting conversation, and I bet that people who are listening are thinking to themselves, man, I wish I could just spend a few minutes with him one-on-one. How do people find you? How do people reach you if they want to spend some time with you, having a little bit of a philosophical conversation?
So I am very, very easy to find. Just plug my name into Google or any other search engine potentially. And even though there are people with the same name, it is very likely that the one that you will find on top is me. And if you don't want to do that, just davidorban.com. That's my personal domain. And there you find my email address. So
Amazing.
you send me a message and you say, hey, I listened to this conversation. It inspired me to reach out. This is what I'm thinking about. This is my challenge. I would appreciate having a conversation with you. And you know, in the month or last year, let's say, people would say, hey, why don't we have a coffee? And then we would sit at Aroma on 72nd and Broadway and have a chat. Now we don't do that, and Aroma closed in the meantime, so we won't be able to do that even after the pandemic. But I enjoy having people reach out and having these conversations. It's part of the serendipity of connecting with people who resonate with what you say. So thank you for that. And yes, whoever wants to do that, they are welcome.
So I want to thank you for spending this time with me, for being on the podcast, for sharing a very interesting and complex challenge. And I hope that the conversation was valuable for you and kind of tried to take something complex and make it a little bit more simple. I like that. For those of you who are listening, if there's a challenge that you want to share on the podcast, please reach out to me. My email address is kim@frameofmindcoaching.com. And if you have a challenge that you're not so willing to share on the podcast, please reach out to me anyways. My email address is kim@frameofmindcoaching.com. David, thank you so much for sharing this time with me, for sharing your knowledge, your interesting questions, and being on the podcast with me. Thank you so much.
Kim, it was a great pleasure.